To a similar feeling people had while playing this seemingly innocent game. It's no surprise then that this scary side of Minecraft, always present in the background, has inspired imaginations all across the internet. Legends and myths like Herobrine have popped up as creepypastas, sure, but also as a sort of outlet to justify the strange feeling that Minecraft world can have. And who could blame them? It's better to pin this strange feeling on some sort of entity, so at least there would be an explanation for why it's there. What's worse than a terrifying reason for a bad feeling? It's not knowing why you have a bad feeling. When you're truly alone. It's why so many people find the beta version of the game even more scary than modern Minecraft. The feeling of loneliness, and yet holding on to this feeling you're being watched is present tenfold in older versions. And I'll get into why later. It's this loneliness when you are truly left alone in this world that's so terrifying. It's why Minecraft's most overlooked version, Peaceful Mode, is actually the scariest. Or at least that's what you might think. See, it isn't just the loneliness that makes Minecraft Peaceful Mode so terrifying, it's the feeling of not being alone when you know you should be. Like there's someone else hiding in your world. So why? Why is it that in the supposedly peaceful version of the game, with no threats, no monsters, do you feel the most unsettled? Why is Peaceful Mode so terrifying? You're in a mine shaft, 80 blocks of pure stone blocking your ascent to the surface. You hear the echoing of your footsteps, the gentle flow of water in the distance. It's completely quiet. When all of a sudden an unsettling cave noise plays, you go deeper, and eventually you run out of torches, leaving you alone in complete darkness. It is in these scenarios that one may feel a sharp sense of unease, a feeling of impending doom. It's not the feeling of knowing you're going to be attacked by monsters, it's something else. Something that makes you turn to check your back, knowing there shouldn't be anything there, but you have a bad feeling regardless. Minecraft is full of these moments where you can't help but be unsettled. But it's in Peaceful Mode where the strange feeling really takes over. I can't help in playing Peaceful Mode to look over my shoulder. Whenever I was in a cave, I always had a weird urge to check to see if anything was following me. I would have no idea what exactly I was checking for, considering there aren't any monsters. There was always some unknown presence of something that made me feel the need to watch my back at all times. I can't exactly describe why I feel this way, and why many others have reported similar feelings even in regular Minecraft. But unlike in regular Minecraft, where this feeling is constantly suppressed from the attacks of mobs, here in Peaceful Mode, there is no barrier. This feeling takes center stage. When there are no mobs to distract you, the horror of this world you're in takes full effect. This feeling seems to be the strongest in places typically filled with mobs. We expect something from a deep cave. We expect monsters and threats. And this is what we look out for because that's just how the game was designed. Without these threats, you get this liminal feeling. It feels like the cave has been ripped out of context, like something should be here that isn't, and the result is this unsettling feeling. The terrifying part is, you still feel a sense of urgency in these places, a sense that you should be careful. But now, it's not as easy to pinpoint why you feel this way. You can't blame this feeling on mobs like you can in regular Minecraft, so your imagination takes over, and you begin subconsciously theorizing what might be out there. If I'm not worried about zombies or skeletons, what exactly am I worried about? And this thought can lead you to dark places. I'm not lying to you when I say if you play enough Peaceful Mode, you begin seeing things that aren't there. On multiple occasions, I could have sworn I saw something move in the corner of my eye or heard a pair of footsteps deep underground that weren't mine. Peaceful Mode can be a psychological horror game, and it's always in places where monsters should be, but weren't. At one point while I was playing, I stumbled across a woodland mansion, an area generally considered to be late game. When I walked into this enormous manor, I was in awe at just how much I missed in previous playthroughs. The time I would normally spend fighting my way through these halls was spent instead silently wondering why nobody was here, at least on a subconscious level. And that's another thing Minecraft Peaceful Mode excels at, it's existential dread. If the hostiles that built this manor are no longer around, what made them disappear? Why is it still so well kept? Why is it still standing? Who's doing the upkeep? Am I really alone here? Is there something here with me? You get the feeling that this place was once inhabited and is now abandoned, and whatever led them to disappear without a trace might be right around the corner. I never truly realized how much I didn't appreciate the scale of this place. The roof was way higher than I remembered, and when night fell, the feeling of walking down these corridors was so weird. The glow of the red carpet and the never-ending hallways. Something was bound to jump at me. Something had to be coming for me. There was no way I was alone. After a while, you start to think, if nothing's coming for me up front, something must be just out of view. If I could point to one thing I felt in that woodland mansion, it would be that I felt followed. Followed by what? I had no clue. With no mobs to justify this terrible feeling I had, I created my own justifications, my own reasons to be scared. It's the same thing that happened in the caves or in the forest, only now it was stronger than ever. Likely due to the fact that this was man-made. The stillness of a mansion, abandoned for who knows how long, that's clean and orderly on the inside. I left the woodland mansion feeling like I just exited sleep paralysis. The monolith became smaller behind me as I walked away, leaving me alone in the rain, but my feeling of being followed never left. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I genuinely felt kind of scared. And that's with all of my experiences and knowledge of the game. I know there can't possibly be any sort of entity I'm not aware of, but the fact I can't get the thought out of my head makes me think of all the possibilities. It also doesn't help that there are many nods to malicious entities existing within the game. The music discs 11 and 13 are both unsettling in regular Minecraft, but in Peaceful Mode, they're even more strange, because they shouldn't even exist. Disc 11, when played on a jukebox, starts with heavy breathing and a person running on stone. After clicking a flint and steel, likely to light the way, the person takes out a book or map of some kind as evidence by the paper rustling and continues running. It seems like the player is running away from something, the heavy breathing and the fast running being evidence of this. In regular Minecraft, this is already creepy, but entirely explainable, likely just mobs. In Disc 13, you can even tell that they're mobs by a lot of the noises you hear in the background. But in Disc 11, there is no confirmation that whatever's chasing the person is a mob. In Peaceful Mode, there aren't supposed to be any mobs, so what could be chasing them? Imagine playing Minecraft for the first time in Peaceful Mode and coming across this disc. There is no easy explanation. You begin to wonder, why would this thing stop at the player in the disc? What if whatever chased the person on the disc is still around? It's subtle hints like these that make Peaceful Mode even more dreadful. It's the same thing for the other dimensions. If the overworld feels like a creepy front for some unknown horror lurking just out of view, then the Nether is this concept done in a much more horrifying way. The Nether in Peaceful Mode has a lot of the same qualities as the overworld, only amplified. I feel like I truly never rested in the Nether on regular difficulties, with the piglins, the hoglins, and the fact that I always had something to do. So the surroundings took a back seat, but in Peaceful Mode, it's different. There's literally no point in going to the Nether in Peaceful Mode besides maybe getting netherite, and even that's trivial considering how generous Peaceful is with health regen. So when you're in the Nether, you really are there to take it in, and when the perpetual threat of hostile mobs and all objectives vanish, what you're left with is an empty wasteland. It's in a situation like this where you notice the haunting ambience of the Nether. It's something mostly overlooked in regular Minecraft because most players are off killing mobs or trying to find materials. They don't really focus on the Nether itself as a place. In Peaceful Mode, the Nether has nothing to offer but itself, so every haunting piece of background noise, the bubbling of lava, the seas of orange going on forever, felt that much more nightmarish. For whatever reason, the Nether didn't give me the same feeling of being watched or followed. It gave me a completely different one. It didn't feel like I was being watched. It felt like I was truly alone in an uncaring wasteland. Whilst traveling through the Nether, I stumbled across a fortress. Yet again, the same exact feeling as the woodland mansion. But unlike the woodland mansion, I never felt followed or threatened. Here, I was supposed to face off against withered skeletons and blazes. Without them, it felt like a ghost remained in their place. The empty hallways and the balconies overlooking seas of lava that dissipate into a thick fog, hiding who knows what. The Nether is a terrifying and lonely place, and it took playing on Minecraft's easiest difficulty to see that. With all this in mind, the haunted feeling of the overworld and the horrors of the Nether, imagine knowing nothing about the game and doing the same things I did. It's no wonder urban legends like Herobrine were so popular among the community back then. Just like my experience with Peaceful Mode, the horror of Herobrine came from the fact that he never actually did anything to you. Stories of players finding man-made tunnels in their single-player worlds that they did not build, finding bizarre and almost impossible terrain generation, seeing a strange figure just outside their view. And I think that's what made Minecraft creepypastas and horror stories back in the day so engaging. It was this collective sense in the Minecraft community that there was something just out of reach, something so terrifying that never made note of its existence explicitly, but the very fact its presence was in question was enough to make you mortified to touch the game. And the fact that even those who were unaware of Herobrine would also report this feeling of being watched proves it was a universal experience for most players of the game. It's why people genuinely used to believe Herobrine was real, not as a joke, but as a genuine phenomenon, myself included. I remember nights me and my friends would attempt to find Herobrine, usually getting too scared and leaving. And it's all because his legend played into the one thing Minecraft's horror has always been about, a subtle thing you sense in the background, something you feel is so utterly terrifying terrifying and yet so out of reach. The feeling that you're not alone. This is all fine in regular Minecraft single player, filled with mobs to distract you from the terrifying backdrop to this otherwise tranquil game. But in peaceful mode, there are no mobs. This backdrop of terror no longer becomes a backdrop. Instead, it's the main attraction, the thing you're forced to focus on because there is nothing to distract you from it. The reason I think this strange feeling isn't felt as much in regular Minecraft and mostly in peaceful mode has to do with our psychology, because our minds are naturally trained to be afraid of peaceful mode. Okay, maybe not just peaceful mode, but let me explain. We don't like being scared, but in general, evolution has taught us that it's at least better to see the scary thing to know the best course of action. Fight or flight, how best to get away, what it looks like. I know I've talked about this before, but I think it applies here too. The feeling of seeing something scary, a monster, a ghost, some sort of threat to your life, is called horror. It's what you feel when you see a hungry grizzly bear coming straight for you. It's the type of fear many horror games use. In fact, the entire genre is named after it. But the other type of fear, the type often overlooked in popular horror media, is terror. Terror is not the direct threat, it's the anticipation of the threat. It's the feeling of being stuck in a forest knowing a hungry grizzly bear is somewhere around here, but not knowing where. Terror is the anticipation, the feeling that you're being watched, the knowledge that something is following you and could pop out at any moment. Experiences of terror often lead to experiences of horror. This is why we can sometimes find comfort in horror, a comfort in the fact that at least the terror is over, at least the anticipation is done with. We can finally be at peace. But peaceful mode doesn't let you feel at peace. It's not knowing something is watching you, it's knowing logically something shouldn't be watching you, but being weirdly doubtful of this fact. I mentioned the distinction between terror and horror in my video on liminal spaces, and wouldn't you know it, one of the most widely talked about liminal games is Minecraft. I could say a lot of what I think about liminal spaces about peaceful mode, and it would apply perfectly because peaceful mode is so good at creating the strange but creepy altered reality feeling. The point is, peaceful mode hijacks our brain in a way that makes it so we must fear the pure terror the entire thing is built on. And as long as we play, we can never stop feeling this fear. So why doesn't this terror apply to regular Minecraft? Sure, some of it can be felt in regular Minecraft in the background, but it's not even close to how I feel in peaceful mode. Well, I think it comes down to this. In regular Minecraft, it's really hard to be alone, to truly walk through the world with no distractions. There is no terror in regular Minecraft because every moment of terror is replaced with cheap horror, mostly in the form of mobs. Like I said earlier, in peaceful mode, I had no idea why I was checking my back in caves, and my imagination would go wild with what could be the reason. In regular Minecraft, I checked my back to see if there were any creepers or skeletons. In Woodland Mansions, I would never feel uncomfortable because of the dread of these hallways. I was on edge because I might be killed by a pillager while trying to get the loot I wanted. Every unknown that your mind replaces with something terrifying is just a skeleton, just a zombie, just a blaze. It's a constant distraction that stops you from finding a truly terrifying game. But even when you are equipped with enough to deal with the common mobs and they no longer become an issue, regular Minecraft still isn't as scary because by now you've gotten so used to your surroundings. You've molded the world to your liking. You can literally fly. So early game Minecraft isn't scary because mobs distract you from the dreadful atmosphere, and late game isn't scary even when the mobs are no longer an issue because you've become too familiar with your world. And it's this that stops regular Minecraft from being truly terrifying. I don't hate regular Minecraft. In fact, I play over peaceful mode any day for pure enjoyment's sake. But the fact that this barrier to how dreadful and terrifying Minecraft can be is able to be lifted by simply changing the difficulty setting seems like something that was almost intentional based on how well it works. And I would be surprised if peaceful mode was created as a way to make Minecraft more scary. It seems too perfect. All these things that would be scary but make sense in regular Minecraft, but would be horrifying without mobs, like Discs 11 and 13, or the well-kept interior of the Woodland Mansions. Who knows if these things were actually the intentions of the developers, but what I do know is that they make peaceful mode scarier than some actual horror games. But of course, we've only talked about the modern version of Minecraft, but I don't just want to look at the current version. I also want to look at the older versions of Minecraft because in a lot of ways they're even scarier than the current version. Thousands of pages of forum posts discuss it. It's been the topic of several videos. It's the version of the game many Minecraft ARGs are set in. The old beta and alpha versions of the game are a breeding ground for the creepy, the eerie, and the downright unsettling. The most widely talked about consideration for why this is the case is the atmosphere of the older versions. The old atmosphere makes me feel so strange. The fog, much closer and thicker than in modern Minecraft. The old terrain generation creating
of 2023. It's a meme. There's not a better way to describe it than that. Interpret it as art, interpret it as criticism if you will, do whatever, but it's a meme. However, as one might gaze into the anguished expression of the Scream or lose themselves in the eyes of the Mona Lisa, this art provided me with realizations that I wanted to share with my lovely subscribers. By the way, if you're not one of those, now is the time to change that by hitting the subscribe button to help out my channel. Anyways, to get an idea of what I'm talking about today, I'm just going to play this video in full. As always, you should check out the original video if you prefer to support the creator, and I've linked it here. But let's go right ahead. Like I said, meme. But I think an alternative way to interpret this piece is a criticism of the state of analog horror, and how some of the tropes are really getting old. Now, let me be very clear. Analog horror is not bad, it's not dumb, and it's not dead, it's not even dying. There are new projects coming out in this genre that blow me away, and I try to cover them when I come across them. But not everything is a gem in the rough, and the amount of garbage passing for analog horror is making it hard for the audience to grow, and for new people to get into this type of thing. Or we can even see good series make their way into these pitfalls because they're just so easy and accepted in the analog horror space, which ends up being really detrimental to people who've shown a ton of creativity before. There's three main problems that I glean from this meme, and I'm gonna go ahead and just ramble about them a little bit. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about here today is ambience. Does every piece of analog horror need an arbitrarily spooky soundtrack when it doesn't make sense? No, absolutely not. This random orchestral or choir chant or whatever it is, we do see this in the space a lot, and it's unnecessary. It actually takes away from the experience for me because of something that I'll talk about in just a sec, in terms of believability. But really, it's just weird. Again, it goes back to the age-old necessity in writing or art, that being show, don't tell. If you're telling me to be scared, if you're telling me here's a spooky soundtrack, I feel like a kid being told what to do, that of course being told to be scared. Don't tell me to be scared, let me get scared on my own. And it's not just the audio here. The second thing I want to talk about is the classic VHS decay. Now, look, there is a reason for this. This is actually part of analog horror heritage. Analog horror really all kind of spun out of a combination of alternate reality games and found footage and VHS tapes have been a big part of this. Analog horror was born out of the idea of finding a tape, not a DVD, not a CD, not an SD card, but a tape in the woods or something, and then watching it after the fact. However, it does need an actual place in the story if you're going to use VHS decay. Arbitrary corruption makes little to no sense. There are examples, and I'm going to show some on screen, where within the narrative, the time that the videos were filmed and the time that they were watched makes corruption make sense. They were filmed in the 90s or something like that, or even before, when we did use tapes, and then the tape got corrupted because we're watching it well in the future. That makes sense. Or maybe it was in a house fire or something and it got corrupted. I don't know. But again, if there's no actual context for the VHS decay, if it's just there, if it's just a filter that you slap on, which like literally I can do in 2 seconds with any editing program. It's lazy and it stinks, and I do think it kind of detracts from the experience. Things that pull you out of immersion don't necessarily have to be bad, but it's just when I'm thinking about immersion, when my brain starts thinking, this VHS corruption doesn't really make sense, it's taking away an opportunity for my brain to be scared because my brain is instead thinking about a little thing going wrong. It's not a big deal, and it really isn't the biggest problem in analog horror. I'd say the first thing I mentioned is a little bit worse, and maybe just the spooky ambiance failing is worse in general, but it is definitely a problem. I've seen it a lot. I would like to see it go away, or I would like to see it make sense, which I'll talk about in a sec. Third thing here, and this is a smaller one, jump cuts. Like, are jump cuts overdone? Now here's the thing, jump cuts in analog horror, again, this goes back to day one. Jump cuts are important in analog horror. When you stumble upon the haunted house with an old bag of tapes in it, they're not in order. They're not alphabetized on a shelf or put into one single 2-hour film. You're not watching a movie here. Analog horror is intrinsically intertwined with alternate reality games as well, so there's this general understanding that you have to work to unravel the story. It's not a movie that's just going to be presented to you from point A to B all the way to Z. You have to unravel it yourself, and so jump cuts are understandable, right? You're going from one tape to another, but again, you have to contextualize it. You can't just bounce around from here and there. The Family Guy meme is literally just jump cuts between different gory parts of Family Guy, and it sounds funny. This sounds ridiculous, like when we're watching here, but there are some projects that kind of do that. Now I'll use an example of a positive, right? Here we've talked about 3 things. We've talked about jump cuts, we've talked about VHS decay, we've talked about like soundtracks, and basically that all contributes to like faking an ambiance. But with the jump cuts and the VHS decay specifically, I mentioned the need for context. Right here, we're gonna look at the McKaylee project, or whatever you want to call it. The ARG I've covered, I made 2 videos on this now, where a guy hits a piece of metal 17 times with a hammer. If you want to learn more about that, you should watch my video on it. And right here, there's gonna be some small spoilers for that series, so you've been warned. But basically, in this series, we have both VHS decay and we have jump cuts all over the place. But as we unpick the story, we realized that there was a reason for that. What we learned was that the potential antagonist of this series, which is like an alien brainworm parasite, we don't really fully understand it yet, has taken over FBI agents, and those FBI agents are actually tampering with the evidence that the FBI has for a murder investigation. They're putting jokes in the tapes, they're decaying the tapes, they're inserting things into the tapes, and they're mucking around. And that actually made sense. Not only did it make sense, like chronologically in the story, but it was something we had to work to, we had to theorize to get to, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, these aren't arbitrary jump cuts from different things. This is because the evidence is messed up because someone's trying to meddle with the investigation. It made sense. The decay is explained by intentional sabotage, and it's woven into the story, and we had to work for it, and all of a sudden it made it great. All of a sudden I was like, wow, I'm not looking at a trope anymore. I'm watching someone turn a trope into a story element, and it was beautiful. It was awesome. So we've covered context, but again, nothing is intrinsically wrong with these things, right? I mean, there are creepy music can be used during creepy sequences. I mean, just right off the bat, what's coming to mind is like the whole Riddler Ave Maria thing, or the music that always played during those sequences in Far Cry 5. I can't even think about what they're called right now. But yeah, soundtracks are intrinsically tied to horror, but you have to earn the right to use them. You can't just slap them on something you've made and said, well, this is scary now, and move on. You have to weave it in somehow. A final thing that I want to point out here, and this honestly just kind of made me burst out laughing, is the description of this video literally says, be afraid. And again, we're going back to the thing where we are told to be scared. We're not made scared. We are told, be afraid. And I think this is kind of making fun, depending on how you look at it, again, because this is a meme, and I'm looking way too into this because I'm sleep deprived. But there's 2 problems here. The first is, again, we're told to be afraid, which this does happen in analog horror all the time. Like literally an arbitrarily spooky sentence will flash up on the screen, and we're just told, be scared, and we're not made scared. But the second thing here is that video descriptions are often used incorrectly to be scary. So video descriptions, again, are a super important piece of analog horror. Because, for example, let's say there's an immersive story being told. We're having somebody in the story uploading videos to YouTube chronologically, or like in the time of the story, and they're like asking us for help. They're like, hey, has anyone ever heard of this thing before? What does this mean? And here's an upload date, and here's some other information I had about it. And that's good because it gives you the opportunity to put in important context for the story that doesn't make sense to go in the video, right? Like if I found an abandoned tape and I just upload that tape to YouTube, for the purpose of me being a protagonist in an analog horror series, I wouldn't film myself before I played the footage saying, this video was recorded on March 12th, 1997, and I found at these precise coordinates in the woods. Like, no, you would fill it out in the video description. So using video descriptions is not bad, but sometimes it's just arbitrary garbage. And I'm not going to specifically like criticize any projects that I've covered or anything because this isn't like malicious or anything. I don't think individual artists are making bad art. I think the community as a whole has trended towards some tropes that need to be overhauled a little bit, or at least accepted if they're contextualized properly. But there are some analog horror series that I've seen that I've covered where the descriptions are just arbitrarily spooky stuff, or they're just stuff that doesn't make sense. Sometimes people talk in codes, and that's fine if it makes sense because again, if you're a protagonist uploading a video asking for help unraveling this found footage mystery, why would you encode the information, or encrypt, that's a better word, encrypt the information you're putting in the video description? Like, it just makes no sense. So again, use your descriptions, use your video descriptions correctly. Don't just tell me to be afraid. Anyways, so that was my first major thing that I wanted to cover with this video right here. Again, this is not super huge criticism. It's just I think ambiance in analog horror is trending in that general direction of lacking contextualization, and again, just telling, not showing. My final words on this are, if you want to use these tropes, that's fine. I guarantee if I ever made an analog horror series, there would be some VHS tape decay in it at some point, but I wouldn't just slap it on there. If you want to use these tropes, contextualize them. Do a great job sewing it into the story like it was done in the McKaylee series. We're gonna move on to the next major thing here. Number 2 is just general gore and violence. Now, gore isn't really the right word for analog horror, for what we see in analog horror, because analog horror thrives on YouTube. Like, that is its native biome. So it's toned down enough, or it's cartoonish enough that usually it's not gonna disturb you. I have yet to like be so disturbed by gore or violence in an analog horror series that like I didn't enjoy it. But it's getting to the point where it's always in series, and it just like it sucks. Showing quote unquote victims is a trope of analog horror now. Like, here's a dead body, and it's like literally, I'm just gonna describe you something. I want you to imagine like a black background and white text and a white picture of a creepy face that looks like it has a 5 million lumen flashlight shining directly at it. And the only thing you can see is that it's creepy or disfigured or something. And then the white text is a name, comma, age. And it's just like you're looking at a victim. Like, I'm gonna play like as many of these as I can because there really are so many. Like, here's the victim, and it's like it's not that it's gross. It's just like it's not fear. It's not tense. Here's my problem with showing just your victims in analog horror, right? It demonstrates that the fear is gone because the person is already dead. There are a ton of great series on YouTube where there are chase sequences, where there are footsteps behind you that you just kind of catch in the left side of your headphones, and you're like, whoa, what was that? But when you have this presentation, all it's making you recognize is that something bad happened, but I don't feel any dread or anticipation. I lied, I'm gonna do a little criticism of an individual series. I recently covered the, I think their original name is Siltrix, but they've since changed it. They've been working on an amazing, like, full DC Universe analog horror series, and it was awesome. I really enjoyed it. I covered it in its infancy. It's since grown a ton. I highly recommend you check it out. But I remember specifically just like one upload where it was talking about, and again, this is minor spoiler alert, but there's a little upload talking about like the Batman having gone through Arkham Asylum and killed like 4 patients, and it didn't show their bodies, but it just described them, and it was just like, okay, like they're dead, cool. I don't know, like it's not really making me it's not really making me feel anything. Or again, going back to the last thing, like anything in moderation. You do it once, that's totally fine. But I do feel like I'm seeing at least one instance of just like, oh, here's a dead body, here's a victim in every single series that I watched at least one time. And in the Family Guy meme right here, like we're not seeing that, we're not seeing like dead bodies, but we're seeing like jump cuts from like the quote unquote violent parts of Family Guy. And I really think that's the creators of meme just working with the best they've got, right? Like I do kind of think if we interpret this video as a criticism, they're criticizing the fact that like a lot of analog horror is just jump cuts between like, oh, this guy was killed, this was whatever. And maybe this is revealing that I just have preferences. I've really preferred one of my favorite things to see in analog horror is like first person film found footage stuff where there's tense chase sequences. Like The Oldest View, that was super tense. That was awesome. Like I loved watching that. I didn't cover it because bigger people covered it. There wasn't anything unique I had to say at the moment. It wasn't worth I would not have provided unique enough entertainment to you guys, so I never covered it, but I really enjoyed it. But there's a ton of this I like, and it provides, I like the tense fear. A lot of people think analog horror is only glimpsing into the past, but it's not. It can be tense. Local 58 is a great example of this. My favorite piece of analog horror ever, as I've said, I did a whole video on this, is the contingency video from Local 58. And that's very present if you follow the theory that I provided. Like, it is having consequences in the present day, but at the end of the day, we're watching a video filmed in like 1960 something. It's an old video, we're watching an old video. All of the fear is gone. But in that same series, in the same Local 58 series, we have the episode You're on the Fastest Available Route, which is maybe one of the most tense pieces of analog horror. Like, I love this video. This, again, minor spoilers for this, even though it's pretty old. But you have a guy just driving on the road. Like, you go back and watch it to realize that like his device is maybe being tampered with. But you watch it and you're like, well, why is this guy going on back roads all of a sudden? You know, he's in some sedan, he could get stuck, he's driving through the woods, like it's creepy. It's the woods at night, and there are things happening, and then the car stops, and you don't really know why, and there's the climax, and it's really tense. So I want you to keep that idea in your mind for a second. There's another way you could have covered that story. You could have started the video with no voice narration, just like an arbitrary like text narration telling you what happened with no context, right? Like not understanding who made this tape, why is it presented this way, and it's just narrating like on 11:59 p.m. Sunday night, authorities found this car crashed in the woods, and then you know the next panel says his face was ripped to shreds by suspiciously alien-shaped claws, and then it's like here is a photo of the victim, and then you just see his dead body and you see his car, and it's like where's the tension? The tension is gone. It was beaten to death before it even had the chance to be born. There's no tension, and I have seen a lot of series like I've seen a lot of pieces of analog horror that chose to present that hypothetical idea in that way instead of bringing us into the tension, instead of making us see. The whole point of found footage is you come across the aftermath and you're like, what happened? And then you watch the found footage and it gives you the answer. The found footage, the VHS tape, isn't supposed to be narration. It's not supposed to be an after the fact. You're not. Why would you watch a VHS tape of a police report? That makes no sense. The police report would be something that, if you even needed it, it would be like in the video's description, or there would be like some projects we have that jump between like here's a video of me and my buddy in the present day talking about this, and then the next upload is the actual thing we're talking about, the actual VHS tape, the actual upload episode, whatever. People are. I think this goes back to an issue of framing, and I've totally like rambled away from gore and violence here. That was like the original point I was supposed to be talking about. But I springboarded. Basically, that was all I had to say about gore and violence. But we get back to framing, and people, creators, they're making amazing art, but they're getting confused with what they're trying to show, and they're framing it incorrectly. So
Und ich dann einfach nur noch da gesessen habe, ganz unauffällig. So.
It should not be a police report with details. Videos like this, for example, where they're trying to make the police report the creepy part. That doesn't make sense. The police report is written after all the tension is gone. The police report is safe. It's not scary. You read it for context, and then you see the tension. People are like combining both of these things, and they're showing like, oh, here's the victim. Okay, why would a photo of the victim, or a police report, or a news report, newsreel, like whatever, why would that be decayed? That's supposed to be presented clearly. The fear, the footage, the creepy decay part is supposed to be the actual found footage part. So again, you know, it's just like it's an issue of framing. I was saying. I hope I'm making sense with my criticism here, because this is coming from a place of I'm not trying to tear this down. I am trying to provide something constructive. But I do think analog horror creators need to go out and need to say, I'm filming something that happened in the present, and the fear has been removed, and this exists just for context and story, and not for arbitrary spookiness. Or I'm going to show something terrifying. And I do think with analog horror, you do have to bounce back and forth between tension and fear and context. You do have to drive the story forward, and you aren't going to be able to let the audience guess everything for themselves. You have to provide some context, but you can provide context without giving the arbitrary spookiness that isn't necessary, and arbitrary jump cuts that aren't necessary, and background music that makes no sense. Anyway, I totally diverted from the original point, so apologies for that, but I hope I made sense of that. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the third major criticism that I think this video brings up. And this is really funny because I took the time to criticize some other people, so I'm going to criticize myself here a bunch. When I watched this video for the first couple of times, I could not figure out for the life of me, what did Chris mean? Like, what is this dumbass Chris Griffin insert supposed to mean? Then I kind of had this like aha moment, and I'm like, you could look at this Family Guy analog horror video